Yeah, man, you already know.
I
I
back up in the
mean,
place. Yes,
it's your
sir.
boy KSHOTEM, right here with my boy B Faithful Music,
Yes,
new
sir.
new video, new topics, what I mean? We're gonna be talking about hip hop and everything else that comes with it, the beginning to the end, cause you already know this shit slam. But we finna, talk about all the ups and downs and all the turnarounds, what I mean? And my boy right here, everybody for starters, what I mean, everybody go subscribe to my boy and all that, what I mean, and lock in that, what I mean, that subscription, what I mean, because my boy got music, what I mean, he got a story, he come from South Carolina with it, what I mean, so,
Yes, sir.
oh boy, influenced heavily by the West Coast culture too, just the culture in general, what I mean, so, we're gonna talk about some real deal stuff, what I mean, the real spill and nothing but it, what I mean.
Hell yeah. Appreciate it for having me too, K Shot. I'm truly
You
thankful.
know, it's always real on this side, like, what I mean, and that's why I like conversating with you, man, because we always got like real stuff to talk about and stuff like that, what I mean.
Oh yeah. Most definitely.
Yeah, man. So, but shit, how come I can hear an echo in this motherfucker?
There you go. Okay. Good now.
Let me hear it. Yeah, I could. Maybe I need to put on a little headset or some shit. I don't think I got one anymore. Yeah, I don't think I got no motherfucking headset. Technical difficulties. Yeah, I don't think I got a headset.
It's all good. It's definitely
Fuck.
all good.
All right, we gonna run it. So, just coming from like music and stuff like that. What kind of like obviously we know what inspired the music, what I mean, and but to you, what was like your first rap song that you ever heard type shit, what I mean?
My first rap song that I ever heard, I would say it would have to be, if I'm going old school, I would probably say Rakim.
Okay. Now, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was saying, once I heard Rakim, that's what really got me influenced by rap. Just listen to like the lyricism, and then I remember when Rakim talked about the 5 elements of hip hop, and just like I was telling you earlier when we was chopping up, I was saying the 5 elements of hip hop consist of DJing, MCing, b-boying, which is basically breakdancing, art, graffiti, and last but not least, knowledge. So it was like once I got the elements of hip hop from Rakim, then that's when I pretty much started, focusing on which particular genre that would be my favorite. And then after that, that's when I got influenced by West Coast G-Funk, because, with me having family in the IE area in California, as a kid, when I would go back and forth between Cali and South Carolina, my uncle would be playing like them OG cassette tapes, like in the Cadillac. So I would pretty much get exposed to like the G-Funk sound. And then as I got older, that's when I started developing like a love for like G-Funk, like through like Tupac, Dash, Corrupt, and as well as any other particular California artists. And then not only that, I definitely got to give a shout out to the Chicano culture as well too, because I definitely love, like not just G-Funk, but also like Mexican rap as well too.
Hell yeah. And say like, from the more of a start of the hip hop, like, you would say the message and kind of like the approach and everything was a little different back then, like prior to like what it is right now.
Oh yes, of course. I would say back then, hip hop had different many subgenres within the genre itself. Like, for example, you may have had certain MCs who were like party rappers, others was like political rappers,
Mm-hmm.
others rapped about hustling, and then you had other rappers who pretty much were like gangster rappers, but back then they called it like reality rap. But I think in general, the media, because reality rap was so pure at the time, the media labeled it as gangster rap, but in actuality, it was called reality rap because you had up and coming rappers from out the West. They were just speaking on what they would see in their inner city communities.
Exactly, and that's what music started from, you know what I mean, was they talking about the surroundings, you know what I mean, and it's just like what's going on in your everyday life type shit, you know what I mean, the like NWA and Ice Cube and all them, you know, just they were the ones that first broke the wave of just like, you know what I mean, going against the barrier a little bit, you know what I mean,
Oh yeah.
but see, what people don't realize though is it wasn't just that, right? Because that wasn't the beginning, but that was like towards the beginning of like how the industry started to, you know, capitalize on, you know, the imagery, you know what I mean? Like, okay, we could have them dressed in all black and Raiders out, you know, gear and give them this, oh, they want to, you know, put out F the police. All right, let's market it then. You know, that was like I feel like the beginning of that type of narrative towards hip hop.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Most definitely. So if you go all the way back to the beginning, um, everything starts with jazz and soul. And I remember if you go like before NWA,
Right.
West Coast music was its roots came from disco and electro music. And then, like with me being from South Carolina, James Brown created a form of music that we call funk music, which is
Right.
basically when you have a beat that's on the one that has like a strong bass line to where behind that bass you add in different instruments. And from James Brown, funk music transcended to where it went to New Jersey with George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic. And then after that, that's when you had like Ohio Players. And
Mm-hmm.
then around this particular time, once funk music hit the West, you had a lot of hip hop artists that they would take old school samples and pretty much kind of sample it and then put dope rap lyrics to the samples. And then eventually that's when a new genre in itself was created. And the one thing that I must admit that I'm even influenced by the West Coast is when you listen to like a West Coast beat, they use more instruments like synthesizers, talk boxes, and all types of electro instruments that pretty much give like different melodies in their song beats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, but like, you know, that was when music was pure and it was for that, you know, it was music for the soul and stuff like that. But once
Mhm.
I mean, I don't want to really touch on those type of topics, you know, like realizing that music had that power, powerful impact on the soul type shit. That's when, like, say, NWA came out and the whole
Yeah.
narrative just flipped. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, big time. Because with NWA, I believe their form of music, reality rap, which is I guess now known as gangster rap, with their version of reality rap, the industry never seen anything like that before.
Right.
So what they tried to do, they tried to contain NWA, but back in those time periods, before music streams that we have today, people had to literally get up off their behind, go to the store and buy the records. And so it was like back then.
Hell
So
yeah,
it's like
man.
back then, in order for fans to really do that for you, that
Right.
means they really had to love you.
Right.
And this is where music for the goods started to go at a crossroads because you had the media trying to contain and boycott NWA, but their fans were buying up more copies than what the media was trying to block. So it got to the point to where NWA, they kicked a whole new door down.
Right. All right, so yeah, that's some real spill. So, you know, that like say NWA era, it lasted for a while, you know what I mean? But I'm trying to think about when it became a thing that everybody was like dishing the CDs out the trunk, you know what I mean? Because we all remember first going to the store and buying these CDs, you know what I mean, and stuff like that, right? And that was like way early on, you know. I mean, hell, you can go back to cassettes and CDs, whatever, right? But it's like, you know, when it became popular, where artists start to become more independent without even knowing they're independent now, you know what I mean? Through just like slinging the CDs out the trunk, you know what I mean? Doing the networking schemes, you know, or not schemes, but networking tactics where they go to the studio, you know what I mean? Or they rap to the dude. And that's where a lot of people don't know nowadays when they see videos of people rapping to bigger artists, they don't even know where that came from. That came from back in the day when you caught up with a rapper and you was trying to prove to him real quick that you had some heart. Hey, man, like, mess with me, you know? So people don't even know now that's where that actually came from, you know. But see, that's the time frame that we was in, though. You know what I mean? Like CDs out the trunk, you got to go to it, not it coming to you. And see, that's where these days things are just there's that wall, and people don't have the backbone, the hustle, the willpower to really go and do this shit. You know what I mean? Because they don't come from that struggle, you know what I mean? And that's when it's hard to understand what's going on. But I'm still trying to remember what year that was. For sure, probably like what, like.
Are you talking about when gangster rap pretty much kind of changed course?
Well, when people start to so, you know, really like push CDs out the trunk, and it was more like they were independent without even knowing they're doing the independent thing now. You know what I mean? Like
I would say pushing CDs out the trunk.
Like mid 2000,
I think
like 2005.
I would say somewhere around between like about 98 to like 2009, because yeah. Because the reason why I said that, KSHOTEM, not to cut you off, the reason why I said probably from like 98 to 2009, because you remember where you and I coming up, social media like MySpace jumped off around at the end of that period. So like once social media came into play, it pretty much kind of made things a little bit too easy in a sense to where it's one thing if your fans get off they seat and go buy your music. But nowadays, because music is such a competitive industry, the way how it's set up nowadays is to where if somebody doesn't have a lot of views just yet, the public will be led to believe to think that it may not be as good, but in actuality, it really is good. That's why for a lot of artists, so I remember there was a DJ out of Vegas. He was telling me, he said that nowadays the game has changed to where they used to sling CDs out the trunk, but nowadays everything is based off numbers and views. So it's like you can be super ill, but if you don't have like the numbers and views, then it's just like that broad audience, it won't come until you push the numbers up.
That's true, but I feel like what solves that problem more or less is when you actually have like to say the content value and all those things, right? And then it's like, you know, they know what they're there for at least, you know, even if you don't have numbers or some shit like that, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But that's where, you know, hard work shines even where the light don't hit, you know what I mean?
Oh, most definitely, because the one thing that I've used, as well as anybody else who I know, I always try to tell them, regardless if somebody doesn't have numbers and views yet, as long as you have authenticity, your authenticity will make a way for you to grow. Because it's like
Oh
the
yeah.
one thing that people love people who true to themselves.
Oh yeah. Being them, that's why I made that video, what I mean? Like be you, what I mean? Be him.
Oh
And
yeah.
people can take that different ways, but I'm not saying like, oh, I'm him like I'm better. I'm just saying I'm him like I'm me. You know what I mean? Like that's what people don't
Exactly.
get, you know what I mean? Like, like I'm me, you know what I mean? Like, but see, people could take that different ways, you know what I mean? But okay,
Oh yeah.
so I wanna speed back to say like when they started like dishing the CDs out the trunks, right? And all that, and people were really being independent without even knowing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, it switched from, because you mentioned MySpace and all these early on social platforms that came out, even YouTube, Twitter, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But around these same times, like say a little around the same time or right before MySpace, that's when the mixtape era digitally came out, and I think 50 Cent's the one that really like made
Pushed
that
it.
a thing,
Yeah.
I believe, and then Lil Wayne just gassed the whole mixtape scene
Oh yeah.
for nothing. And that was a time where that was the independent route without, again, people really knowing it. They were going in that direction that we came into now. But see, it was speeding up as the time was going on, you know what I mean? Like the way people digest things, then it
Mm-hmm.
became more trendy as the time went on. After the mixtape era, like that Piff, Hot New Mixtapes, and even World Star Hip Hop, these type of places, once that all that became out of thing, which you could still go there and look stuff up, you know what I mean? It's just
Oh yeah.
that's
True.
that's how things just get unpopular for no reason. Just like when MySpace was out, remember that? And then like the next day it was like Facebook was the next big thing for some odd
Yup.
reason. Even though it was way more boring, boof, you know what I mean? Like man, that shit was whack. And it was for college students. Like, why are we on this shit? So
Exactly.
that's some dumb shit, social engineering like a motherfucker, you know what I mean? But that's another topic. But this was just like the beginning of what it is actually now, I believe. You know what I mean? Like that was
Oh
a
yeah.
real like start, because around that same time, that's when 2007, 2008, Soldier Boy got signed, and that's when the whole shit
Yeah.
completely
It went viral. Yeah.
that shit completely changed the internet, and that's what became to be now. Because Soldier Boy made it more trendy, and you know what I mean, like more like flashy type shit instead of like
Mm-hmm.
repetitive. You know what I mean? And now, I mean, you know what I mean, the music's good, but say like let's go back to like when 50 Cent really broke it with the whole mixtape era. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
around that time, I could still say that it was still like a coast thing, you know what I mean? People really took pride in like, oh, I come from the West Coast, or I'm from the South, and the music, you knew where it came from, But
Oh yeah.
nowadays, this shit just all over. Like you don't know. A motherfucker can sound like he's from the South, but he's from Texas now, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I know exactly what you're getting at too. And
Like the
I
South, like
believe.
like deep South, like you know what I mean? Like in like some real country shit, you know what I mean? I know Texas still ain't that still the South actually?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
still the
Texas
South.
still the South.
I'm
Yeah.
done.
Texas, Florida, Georgia, South and North Carolina. Yeah. That's all. Tennessee. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's all
Tennessee
South.
for sure,
But
man.
the piggyback off of what you were saying on KSHOTEM, how you can't tell anymore. I believe that's what happened in the days of like social media, because like nowadays everything is so accessible to
Yeah.
where you can have somebody from one particular region and he can pretty much kind of do his research and pretty much kind of train himself to learn the lingo or something, like somebody from a different region. And then once they automatically like learn the formulas in terms of like making beats,
Mm-hmm.
they can sound just like that person. But the only flaw is if you do it that route, I mean,
It's a gimmick.
yeah,
It only
pretty
goes as
much.
far as you're looking down the street. If once it turns a corner, it's done.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Okay, so that goes back to like people got to be more original with their sound, and you know what I mean. And the more original you are, the more organic it's gonna be. You know what I mean. And that's
Exactly.
what music isn't these days. And I think that's why people like me kind of stand out sometimes because I'm just me and I don't try to be like anything else. You know what I mean? So I think
Exactly.
that people need to figure out how to be more original again, and just like yourself. You know what I mean? Like, I don't get no type of vibe that you trying to be like this or that. It's just you. You know what I mean? And
Oh yeah, most definitely. Because the one thing about me, by me pretty much knowing who I am, I feel like in order to make good music, you first have to have a foundation of being comfortable being who you are. And I
yeah,
think and I
well,
think a lot of artists to where because we're in the era of trends and going viral, I think a lot of artists make the mistake to where they get so caught up in trying to go viral, they lose themselves in terms of being authentic.
mm-hmm,
And what I mean by that is it's just like you can't you can't live nobody else's lifestyle.
yeah.
I mean, you can get away from it at first, but sooner or later, it's gonna catch up with you.
I think some people, bro, because they don't come from like a certain time frame and whatnot, they might just come up not understanding like certain things, you know what I mean? In a general, you know what I mean? It's because they came up in a trendy, fast paced, a lot of people don't have certain qualities. That's why some people can't write. They're just punching artists or whatever. Because a lot of people come up in that time frame where, what I mean, like they don't come around the same stuff. But that's why they got people like us around to kind of like, what I mean, put them on a certain game. And I just want to say this for clarification. A lot of the videos that I make clips, where I'm being funny, clowning shit. I'm really just trying to help people out at the end of the day. What I mean? It's tough loving, what I mean? But I'm trying to show you, like, hey, what I mean? Like, I'm gonna call shit out. I'm gonna let it be known what it is, whatever. What I mean? But it's like, say if I clown somebody on their bars or whatever, I assume they're gonna go in the studio and write some different shit, or maybe enhance it a little bit, or maybe their next song they're gonna be like, man, I'm gonna show this fool shot him something different. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know,
Mhm.
but you know what I mean? It's just like that's what this hip hop shit comes from though, is keeping it real. And everybody ain't gonna have the same opinion or be like the same or whatever. It's just a part of like the culture. You know what I mean? And I would be a yes man just to fake it. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I'm gonna keep it real. Fuck it.
Mhm.
But it's, what I mean? That's what this music shit is though. Just being who you are. And but see, again, like we talked about, that's not what it is now. So people don't understand that approach. But we come from like, hey, we from the West Coast. You feel me? Like, we from the West. You feel me?
Yeah, 100.
Like
I
I
remember
remember, I
like
remember
back.
growing up, taking pictures as a kid with the two fingers, because we love the West Coast. You know what I mean?
Oh
West
yeah.
Coast. It didn't matter about the cities in in California. It just mattered we were all part of the same shit. We all represent the same shit, and that's where music got detached from the culture more. You know what I mean?
Oh
Because
yeah, most definitely. Because I think I remember I would say back in the old days, you would have certain artists to
yep,
where even though they was from the city, they would still rep their particular area where they are in the city, but it was still connected to like the land. But it's like the one thing I'm seeing nowadays is you have a lot of artists to where they no longer care about the land or the city they from. They just want to just push the hood. And the reason why I say that is nowadays you got to be careful doing that because number one, with the this Rico shit that's going on, that's number one. And then
oh
number
yeah.
two is like number two is like if you're a music artist, your goal is to make music because it's like if you're making music and then at the same time you gotta worry about enemies, that's too much on your shoulders. Because sooner or later, one's gonna break.
Now, I just want to say this, right? Like, people don't even know that whole Rico shit came from, like, the hip hop police, the start of, like, all the you know what I mean, that type of stuff, you know, back in the day, what was it like 2000s and stuff like that, you know. I believe 50 Cent and the G-Unit Squad, they were like some of the first people, maybe early on, you know what I mean. There was probably some people, maybe even Pac, who knows. I don't know if he talked about hip hop at least, but I know 50 Cent for sure, you know, whatever. But that was like the first time people heard like, oh shit, like they got specifics in this motherfucker. So, you know, it
it
all
uh, it
it,
it originally started off where, like, back in the late 70s with Rudy Giuliani, to where they was trying to take down like the mob in America. And what happened was, before Rico, you had like bosses to where they can get people peeled, and because they wasn't at the scene of the crime, they wasn't allegedly tied to the crime, which didn't make them guilty. So what happened was, once Giuliani passed like the RICO laws, it went from to where now, even if you don't do the crime, if you're a part of the organization,
yeah,
you can get indicted just as
right.
bad as somebody who actually did the crime.
Well, yeah, because they label it as a gang and all these different type of things, you know what I mean? And that's what people don't realize these days. You know, you might as well be an artist, you know what I mean? Because like I said, in 2012, you know, they brought out
Mhm.
you know, drill music, you know what I mean? And then what you know, right after that, you know, kind of like Rico and stuff. I think Rallo was like one of the first ones to really experience some shit like that, you know what I mean? Or I don't know, maybe I'm sure there was people before that, but that's the first time I really heard. And you know, 2012 when drill music came out and that influenced the whole culture. I mean, to me, it's like it's like planting a seed, you know what I mean? Hey, let's make this shit be known, and then let's come out with this other shit later on, you know what I mean? So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's just what it seems like, just sitting back looking at shit, you know, watching the culture and shit as the years go on, you know what I mean? But I
Oh
mean,
yeah, because
but it goes
the
back
thing.
to saying, you know, people need to be artists and focus on the music and being a creative one too, you know what I mean? Because if people were to just, you know, focus on that, they would be more dope. They wouldn't be involved into any shit, you know. I mean, they just doing their own shit, you know what I mean? Like focus on their craft, and that's gonna feed your family more than, you know, hanging out with the gang and trying to be viral that way, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because me personally, you got to keep in mind, like, when you go on wax, or, to those who may not know what that term means, to go on record. Whenever you go on record dissing ops and family members, you
Oh yeah.
opening you're opening a door to where demons gonna come after you, because
That's some different shit for sure, you know what I mean? And that's why, you know, a lot of people that go and do that, it you know, it doesn't last too long, you know what I mean? Because
no.
like you putting too much energy into the wrong shit, you know what I mean? And you know, when you're making songs, this and that, and they live right down the block too. You already been having beef forever anyway, right? So it's like you just and see, okay, let's talk about that too. So when Chief Keef came out and all that, that's what influenced like doing dumb shit on social media, like pulling up on your ops and all that shit, right? And
Mhm.
you know, that just flipped even more stuff upside down, especially say in places like Chicago, because now it's like you beefing on the damn phone, and it's like motherfucker right down the street anyway, you know what I mean? And the
Yeah,
blocks are so
that.
close, so you know it's even worse than when you're not on the phone, because then it's only when you see that person, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
So
and
that's where that social media shit had gotten a lot of motherfuckers knocked
that's a
off.
great that's a great topic. I'm glad you brought that up too. It's like social media. Like, first of all, I'm gonna give the good and the bad. The good part to social media is, like, if you want to run like a legitimate business, it's a great platform to connect with people.
Yeah.
The bad side of social media is if you just on that motherfucker, just trying to start beefs or gain clout through controversy, that shit's gonna take the same way it builds you up, it'll tear you down. Because I was reading a newspaper, so with that current RICO that's going on in hip hop now, what they're trying to do now is to where, like, say if you have a rapper that has issues with another rapper, say if they going back and forth like on IG, Facebook, or whatever, and one of them gets killed, the courts have the power to subpoena the evidence and documents off social media and use it against you in a court of law. So basically, that whole self-incrimination type shit, it really can be your downfall.
Yeah. I mean, that's why people, again, you know what I mean, they gotta focus on the music. And I mean, at the end of the day, though, it got to that point because of how the music totally influenced the whole culture, like say, like the drill scene, and how after that shit, everybody was just like doing the same shit in music videos, like jumping around with a gang of motherfuckers, like, you know what I mean? So, I mean, I mean, you know, they probably just looked at it like shit, like, gotta do something about that shit, you know what I mean? And I mean, but see, the people, again, if they just focus on the music side of shit, you know what I mean? Focusing on, you know, what they gotta do every day and shit like that, you know what I mean? Telling their story in the music, you know, that's what hip hop is, you know what I mean? Hip hop isn't about all that. And see, back in the day when you had groups and all that, they weren't gangs and people that were just waving shit around. Like, it was like, if they had something, it was for protection. And it's like motherfuckers, they were a music group, you know what I mean? And they were a real one, like say Wu-Tang. And I mean, you know, especially all the earlier groups, you know what I mean? Because music didn't have that aspect where it was like what it is, what it turned into throughout the time, you know what I mean? But you know, nowadays it's just, you can't control some of that shit because it's like, it's just the influence of the culture, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah,
because like nowadays, and you and I both know this, nowadays the way social media is set up, social media values the negative shit over the positive. I've seen people on social media to where, say if they may start off with like 10 followers, if they get into like a serious beef with somebody to where it's like it's real smoke, these motherfuckers go viral overnight. And from a social media perspective, in terms of numbers, that may look good, but at the same time, it really isn't. Because number one, it's like, if you have issues with somebody, you shouldn't get on a camera, yapping, talking about, oh, when I see you, I'm gonna just do this to you, I'm gonna do that. Because now you pretty much helping the damn police build a case on you. So it's like, if something does go down, they can stick your ass to where it's like, okay, well, because on this video you said when you see this person, you're gonna do this and that to them. Now you hit with first degree. And it's just like a lot of, going back to like the 5 elements of hip hop, like how knowledge is one of the 5 elements. I feel like motherfuckers just have to learn how to start being smart. Because to be honest with you, I understand hip hop is a combative sport, but at the same time, there are ways to where you can compete without getting off track.
Yeah, I mean, it's it goes to being focused on just, yourself. The more you're within yourself, I mean, you're gonna create shit that's more organic, you know what I mean? And
Oh yeah.
it just, to be around a whole bunch of different energies all the time, you know what I mean? That's where all that shit stems from, though, is like, you know, being influenced by the wrong things, you know what I mean? And just being around the shit that ain't gonna make you either more musically influenced or driven in your own life. I mean, to me, as an artist, if you're not around people that are, influencing you like musically and showing you some real quality to life, then why the hell you around them? You know what I mean? So, but the minute
Exactly.
people get around that instead of the gang and all this shit that just wants to do the same shit, which is nothing anyways, right? Then you realize like, oh shit, like I'm learning more now, you know what I mean? And that makes you a better artist, and I mean it's common sense, right? You by yourself, you writing, I mean shit, you probably gonna come up with some crazy shit, you know what I mean? Because you by yourself, you go through some shit, bam, you write it down, you know what I mean? Like
Oh yeah.
you but see that's where you could take that to a music group then if that's what you want to do, right? But now we're
Oh
talking
yeah.
real aspect of terms, right? Not chilling with the gang making music, right? It's like, okay, are these people that we can really go on some shit? But nowadays, music groups don't really work out, so it's better off to just do your own shit independently,
Oh yeah.
connect to people that are like-minded people like you, where you come together and you really like when you notice like you come together with something, you write some shit, you like, bro, we came up with this hook, this idea, man, your verse is harder, like it's flowing. You better be around that motherfucker more often. He
100.
wasn't trying to get you to do no dumb shit and go no places that just drive me here, take me there. It was all focused on like what needs to be done. Hey, you gotta be around that person, you know what I mean? And that's what makes artists stronger artists, you know what I mean? And that's why people come around me. But see, that's why if you're trying to be like a strong music artist, I feel like,
Mhm.
or just in general, you know what I mean? Like if you want to have like strong qualities and shit, you gotta not be around the shit that ain't good for you.
Oh yeah.
Has to
Most
be
definitely.
your own, or be around the shit that's gonna have an influence. And when something is an influence around you, when after you leave the situation, like it's like you feel enlightened, you know what I mean? You feel like, damn,
Oh
like
yeah.
I want to hang out around this person more. Like I like the type of stuff they talk about, you know what I mean? And that goes a long way, and that'll make you a better artist too, you know what I mean? And because the thing about being an artist is you're telling your story, so you have to work on yourself in order to tell your story. So that's why we talked about, the youngins and stuff like that, how like they're living their story right now. Us, we're a little older, so like we're the ones actually telling the story. That's why
Oh yeah.
if I write something or whatever, or we freestyle, like it might just come out like so smooth, whatever, like freaking whatever, right? Because you're just telling your story simply, but you gotta be older. You gotta be to a certain level to be able to tell your story, though. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's where music nowadays, people trying to go viral and trying to do this and do that, but like they don't realize it all stems from like you living your life and then telling it on the mic. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Another thing I want to speak on too, not to cut you off, going back to when you were saying how a lot of artists get kind of caught up into the gangs. I think the one thing that a lot of artists, even if they from a neighborhood, don't realize is sooner or later, once you reach like commercial success, the hood's
That's
gonna eventually turn against you.
Yeah, because that only works getting the attention, but once you actually get some, or why do you think about it, right? Let's just it's common sense too, right? Okay, like just like what you said, right? Once you get to that commercial level, they don't want to. Why do you think every single artist that you really know about, even Young Boy, hell, he became a singer, Lil Durk, he did the auto tune thing. I mean, most people they make that turn because they know they're on a different level now. They can't necessarily always dish out the same type of stuff, like their influence is like on a wider span, you know what I mean? And they know
Hmm.
a lot more people watching them and labels, this, and that, and the third. So, but every artist, once they get to a certain level, I mean, you know, they can't be writing about gang stuff and bang bang, shoot 'em up and all this, you know, on the block, this and that, you know, because that only works in the beginning when you're coming up, you know what I mean, like that wild shit. But I remember back in the day though, it wasn't really a thing like that, you know what I mean? Like people just came up telling their story, like they didn't. There wasn't no crack in the goddamn cement to just be like, oh, let's sit right here, you know what I mean, and just wiggle through. It was, I mean, you had to go to a label or like somebody approach you like, hey, you hard. I see you out here hustling these CDs. I see you selling chocolates and CDs. You know what I mean? Motherfuckers used to get their shit off different ways. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like people gotta get back to the, you know, the basis of where this shit really comes from. You know what I mean? And that's why we're here talking today about this shit. Is
to make you laugh right quick. I'm glad you to make you laugh talking about selling CDs. Have you ever noticed to this day why, like, when you go to radio stations, they have metal detectors in there?
Shit, you already know that came from like pop.
When not just pop, but it was like it wasn't just pop, but it was like back in the old days. I would say like late 80s, early 90s. You would have like motherfuckers who were walking a radio station, and they would tell motherfuckers, they like, play our shit or we gonna fuck you up.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Okay, hold on. So you talking about extortion. So say like extortion, the first person I remember doing that shit, of course, was like Suge Knight, but I know there was somebody before him that was on that extortion shit where he just go into the record label and be like, boy, you better give me that bread. Play my record, give her the bread.
Yeah. Because that's why to this day, not only do they have like metal detectors, but they've gone to the extreme now to where you have to set up appointments because that just shows you how, like, back in them days, because people wanted to make it, they were willing to use excessive force to make sure they shit get spent.
Well, you gotta understand though, like if a motherfucker, you know, he ain't worried about going to jail, then he looks at it like, well, shit, if it's gonna get a spin, then I might sit down for a minute, but shit, I might come out and it's just going up now. So, but see, that was like the start of a lot of that shit though, like extortion within the hip hop, you know what I mean, like where Suge Knight would just like go in places and, you know what I mean, demand the bread, like you said, spin the record, and he was actually the only one I really knew that was on that, other than Big U that recently, you know. I mean, hell, I didn't even know recently Big U was caught up in so many different things. Like I was like, God damn, like this will Big U a savage, really? Like, but that's another whole thing. But you know, that might even be something that might be ended right now too. You know what I mean? Oh, I know.
Because I think what hip hop trying to do now, because you got to keep in mind, whenever they change something, they always introduce something to where I wouldn't necessarily say it's good, but at the same time, I would say it will probably be against an artist. Like, for example, yes, they are cleaning out extortion, but I think the new thing that record labels are trying to do now is they're trying to withhold masters from certain artists.
Oh yeah. I'm trying to find my head really quick.
And me personally, by our label withholding masters, that's basically another form of extortion, because now you trying to hang something over an artist's head as leverage.
Yeah, I was trying to find my headset because they saying that there's a pretty big echo. You feel me? And I kind of figured that.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we need a fucking headset. Damn, I fucked up. My bad, y'all.
Oh, it's all good.
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, man. So hold on, let me say something.
Okay.
I mean, it don't sound like it right here. Hold on. I just want to check this real quick. Oh yeah, I can still hear that. Oh yeah, that shit sounds horrible, nigga.
Oh yeah, I heard it just then too.
Yeah, there's a big ass echo. You know why? It's because we don't have, not one of us has a headset. One of us has to have a headset on. There is a pretty bad echo, dog. Like,
hold on, I think let me put my headphones on. I think I got I got my little
put some headphones on this motherfucker. I don't know. I just have my other headset, but it's not. I can't put it on this motherfucker. Damn. I fucked up. Damn, that's all bad.
Yeah, I got mine on. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay, yo. I don't know. I might need one too. Shit. I don't know, y'all. Is there still echo in this shit? I mean, I can hear my voice still.
Well, yeah, I don't hear none on my side.
I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
That shit weird, fool. Damn.
Hell yeah.
That shit pissing me off. Damn, man. I fucked up. Let me look at my phone real quick.
For sure.
Well, I'm gonna go right here after this shit. Yeah, this shit fucked up. Damn. Yeah, I might have to end this shit. You know what I mean? Because this shit ain't gonna work out. Not like this. You feel me? Like, because the whole shit probably been echoing the whole time. You know what I mean? So I need to figure out. You know what I mean? Damn. That's busty. Yeah, that's busty. Oh, I'm gonna have to end this shit. Hold on.